Listen, it's true that U.S. politics is always dramatic, but sometimes it's so intense and so wild that it crosses into commotions territory, which is to say it becomes pop culture. Today on the podcast, the group chat is here. We'll get into a hectic week in U.S. politics. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Look, let me just start by saying I think we're all still trying to process the assassination attempt on Trump and what it could mean in the coming weeks. Now that the U.S., we should say the U.S. is not a stranger to assassination attempts on its political figures, but something that I think is worth talking about is how these harrowing events, these big events, get encoded into pop culture and the world around us. Think of the assassinations of John F. Kennedy or Dr. Martin Luther King. What really struck me about the last few days was, the way that this assassination attempt on Trump is how quickly the story has taken on a life of its own. In our feeds, on T-shirts, these images are kind of already seared into the minds of so many people. So to talk about all of this, the group chat is here. Drew Magary is here. Marina Fang is here. Jason P. Frank is here. Drew, Marina, Jason, what's good, everybody? Welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm delighted that you guys are here. Listen, before we begin, I should say we are talking right now on Friday morning. I need to say this because this being American politics, everything could change by the time this conversation is even done. So I just need to tell people that we are speaking on Friday morning. All right. I think we've all seen the photograph that captured sort of the moment that Trump's ear was grazed by a bullet. There's blood on his face, his fist in the air. There's like an American flag perfectly positioned directly above his head. It felt like within minutes that photo was everywhere. I think it's like the place for us to begin. Jason, what did you think when you first saw that photo making the rounds?
It's a super effective photo. It's incredible. And obviously what that means is that whoever looks at it is going to read their political position into it. It's effective at capturing the personality of Trump, his pugnaciousness, his anger. It feels like him. It has as much personality as he does, which is impressive for a photo because he has a lot of personality.
Yeah.
And so looking at it, I felt everything that I think when I think about Trump.
Right. I think the idea of him sort of pumping his fist in the air, his mouth is sort of in the middle of saying the word fight, and he'd just been recently shot. There's so much packed into just this one photo. Marina, this is a news photograph that is now being analyzed by, art critics in major publications. The Washington Post's Philip Kennicott wrote that it's an image that could change America forever. When you hear that, how are you feeling about this photo now being discussed as a work of art, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, Jason sort of said it really well. It is a really striking photo. I mean, I'm sure we'll get into this about the memification of it, but there's also so much gravity to it. Mm-hmm. This is obviously, it's already becoming this defining moment of this period of our politics. And I see the rationale for analyzing it as this moment of art and this symbol of what is happening right now. Yeah. It's been really interesting also to hear from other photographers and also the photographer himself, Evan Vucci, who took that photo. It's been interesting to hear from people about, what it takes to get a photo like that and the sort of the photojournalism aspect of it. Yeah. The other thing that I was thinking was that we talk about in journalism that we're writing the first draft of history, and photojournalism, this is the sort of photojournalism version of that.
Right. Drew, where are you at with this photo? And I mean, it really truly felt within maybe half an hour, every outlet had the same photo, on the front page. It was in every newspaper the next day. How do you feel about the dissemination of that photo?
I mean, I kind of knew it was coming because it's a great photograph. I disagree with Jason. It doesn't feel like Trump's personality to me. It feels extremely unearned. It looks like he kind of if it were like Abraham Lincoln in that photo, I would feel very patriotic and be like, yeah, well, Abe, he dodged the bullet. Nice job, Abe. But this is a man who has a track record of being pretty vile in pretty much every way, and actually a literal criminal. And so to me, it's Obviously the assassination attempt was illegal and that was bad, right?
Yeah, political
I can establish
violence,
that.
scary
But
thing.
but the idea that he is I knew immediately when that moment happened, I was like, okay, that's the one the press is going to lead with because it's the best story and it makes for the best sort of narrative for them, where it's like, oh, Trump, what a comeback kid or whatever, just completely and utterly unearned, but suits the purposes of a media machine that does not want any election to ever be lopsided. It needs it to be close so that people stay engaged all the way through. And what better way to do that than to, turn the assassination attempt on Trump into, essentially the Obama hope poster for right-wing lunatics, right? So I just felt very, I saw it and I was like, oh, he took it on the chin. Well done. Like, he got up, he wanted to fight. That was all very, it would be inspiring if it were literally any other human being on the earth. And so I can't like get all fired up over it because it's Donald Trump. And the idea that when someone like when the Washington Post is like, oh, here's the photograph that changed the world. Well, dude, you're the media. You're the one who sets the agenda. You set the talking points. So when you tell everybody, oh, this is going to change the campaign, that's you wanting to change the campaign. That's you wanting to say, oh, this is going to be the defining image because we're going to run it 5,000 times a day for the next like 4 months. When honestly, I have been trained as an American to forget everything that has happened in the news 24 hours after it has happened. And frankly, this really isn't all that different. It doesn't cause me to be like, oh, you know what? I'm going to vote for Trump now. That didn't happen. Like, I'm going to, whoever, if they replace Biden with a sack of flour, I'm going to vote for the sack of flour. Like, it doesn't matter. So I think that it is only an effective photograph in terms of a narrative that in some ways drives a campaign now. And this has been true ever since Trump was first elected president. The narrative drives the campaign more than the actual groundwork of knocking on doors and being like, hey, can you come vote?
Well, okay, so I want to talk about that idea, the idea that the photo is involved in narrative creation, because I think you're right about that. I don't want to make light of the photo, sort of like the occasion, because again, this is an assassination. This is a very serious thing. Somebody died at that event. But the two things that really struck me, one, I heard a New York Times reporter say, it is really incredible to watch someone like Donald Trump be aware in real time about the narrative potentials of what it looks like when he gets up off the stage after he was shot, and start to pump his fist in the air because he's aware that every camera at that moment is pointed at him, and even and so he decides to sort of do the shouting fight thing because that is a part of that narrative creation. And then the second thing that really struck me was when he spoke at the Republican National Convention on Thursday, there were two photos behind him. At first, he was started to speak, and it was a photo of him on the floor of the stage after he was shot. And then as he sort of got to the climax of his story, that photo was replaced, and the photo that we are talking about was the photo that was sort of behind him on the stage. So I think he's probably the most media savvy president that I can think of. And he was very aware of the implications of using that photo. I want to talk about another way the story has been showing up. I want you guys to take a listen to this.
This is actual merch. We did not make this up. All right, look, they've got shirts that say, my pronouns, you/missed. Grazed and unfazed. And finally, here we go again.
So that was Anthony Anderson. He's filling in for Jimmy Kimmel this week, and he's talking about some of the ways that the Trump photo has turned up on T-shirts. Jason, what do you make of the speed with which this image has just been turned into memes and merchandise so quickly?
Well, that's the thing about media right now, is that the Washington Post really doesn't set what the narrative is anymore. That all happens on social media. And one of the interesting things about watching this particular image exist is that you see it and you notice how effective it is. It's such an emotional image, whether or not you even agree or disagree with the emotion in the picture. It's a very emotional image. It captures a moment. And yet, because of the metabolism of the internet, that means that it's the best fodder for jokes for a few days, right? Like the effectiveness of this means that it's exactly the kind of thing that we want to spin on its head and turn and make light of. So you see a photo of this quality being instantly turned into memes instead of being, you know, a historical document that gradually acquires its iconic power through newspapers that would later be talked about in an A-push class or something. It doesn't become a defining document of American history through the same route anymore. I don't know if one photo can have the power that photos during the Vietnam War had anymore. It feels like in our context, it will always also be a joke.
Marina, what's your take on this? How are you surprised at how quickly the photo ended up showing up in memes and in merchandise?
Not at all. I mean, honestly, the least surprising thing was the photo becoming a meme. I think I saw some tweet. I can't remember if it was a tweet or if it was on Instagram, but I think it was on Sunday. Someone was saying like, your worst uncle is getting this photo printed on a t-shirt as we speak, or something like that. And it's true. I mean, it speaks to sort of the memification of politics over the last, 8 to 10 years. And I think that's happened on both sides, but particularly on the far right, it has taken on this particular tenor of, anything that we can sort of use to make Trump into our hero, we'll use that. And so this photo was sort of the perfect encapsulation of that. And as you said, Elamine, I mean, Trump, more than really any political figure in recent memory, understands that power of image and of celebrity. And this sort of made perfect sense that this would become a t-shirt, fodder for t-shirts, the same way that, the ear bandage has now become this huge thing at the RNC.
Right. So this you're talking about the sort of really striking images we're seeing of like hundreds of people at the Republican National Convention who are just getting ear bandages to sort of match, I guess, in solidarity with Donald Trump, who has an ear bandage as he spoke on the stage. That's what you're referring to there, Marina.
Right.
So
heartwarming, really.
I want to maybe spend one more minute on this, Drew, and then we got to move on to a different topic. But I just want to talk about the contrast between the photo and Joe Biden's performance at the debate. Because those two events happened quite in tandem, which is like that Joe Biden had that really poor performance that is raising all kinds of worries about his ability to, win the election. How have those two events, in your mind, televised events, changed how we talk about this upcoming election?
I think the debate did more to change the election than anything else. If that debate doesn't happen, we're not having this conversation about Democrats wanting to replace him, and they're going to replace him. I think that is more or less a lock now, right? But I've lost my train of thought. I do apologize. I can't remember what the hell I was going to say. I'm a professional talker.
That's all right. That's the thing that happens to all of us. But the idea, the question was about those two events happening in tandem.
So, I mean, the basic takeaway is, Trump is strong. Like, let's get Trump strong bracelet, and Biden is weak. And I thought the debate, like I said, had more impact because it is the lasting impression. It dominated the news cycle for 2 weeks until Trump was shot. And that it not only did it dominate the headlines, but dominated it as a hurricane hit Texas and destroyed many parts of Houston, and had there was a lot of news going on that all at least if you are a New York Times reader, you didn't really hear much about because you were too busy, reading articles about how anonymous Democratic sources believe that Joe Biden is a little bit shaky these days. And just that over and over again, it just gets hammered and hammered and hammered until, again, we're in a place where the presentation of things becomes the reality of things. If that weren't the case, Donald Trump never would have been elected president to begin with. He wouldn't be there right now. He is purely a creature of television. It's how he won. That's how, like you said, he was able to, get up and, recognize, how to capitalize on the moment for clicks, metaphorically speaking. And Democrats suddenly are like, we're losing the television war, and that's the only thing that matters. And that's where we stand right now.
If folks are just joining us, my name is Alamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This show is called Commotion. And in the group chat this morning, we've got Drew Magary, Marina Fang, and Jason P. Frank. And again, we are talking on Friday morning. I'm saying this because I know how fast and how quickly American politics can change. We are talking about how this week, this wild week in American politics, has sort of reverberated through pop culture. So a few minutes ago, we heard that clip of Anthony Anderson. He was one of the late night television hosts that waded into the Trump shooting. Earlier this week, we also talked about, on the show, we talked about how late night hosts are trying to navigate this story as comedians, which is kind of tough. Some have responded by doing away with the comedy altogether. I want you guys to hear what Stephen Colbert had to say on Monday.
And my immediate reaction when I saw this on Saturday were horror at what was unfolding, relief that Donald Trump had lived, and frankly, grief for my beautiful country. And then fresh horror as we learned that attendees had also been shot, one of whom died at the rally. So, as we've done many times in the past, when some tragic event has shocked the nation, I'm starting the show tonight talking at the desk, though I could just as easily start the show moaning on the floor.
That is Stephen Colbert not being funny at all. There's nothing funny at all about his delivery there. Jason, you've been tracking the late night responses to the assassination attempt on Trump. What do you think? Who do you think has done the most effective job responding and meeting that moment, you think?
For me, it was Jon Stewart.
Okay.
He had a little bit of luck in that he talked on Tuesday. The rest of the hosts talked on Monday. So he got a little bit more berth. But Colbert's version that you just heard there, I don't think is super effective in 2024. He's trying to position himself as a father figure in a way where I don't think many of the kids that he's trying to shame are watching Colbert. Only people who want to be shamed, who feel the same way, who want this father figure to come in, are listening. There's not going to be any like bratty little meme maker listening to Colbert and thinking to himself, well, maybe I shouldn't. I just don't think that's how Colbert figures into the culture anymore. And I don't think he's speaking to an America that wants to be sobered up or is ready to be sobered up anymore. Seth Meyers took a similar approach. He wasn't as dad-like, but it was just kind of a personal reflection about what he thinks the country needs. Jon Stewart was able to be funny. He was really funny. And his segment has the most views on YouTube.
Yeah, I think the idea of Colbert sort of positioning himself as an America's dad situation, I think that's bang on. Whether America's looking for that figure or not sort of remains to be a larger question. I want to also point out there is one comedian who didn't make the most tactful response to the whole situation.
Happy birthday to you. Make a wish, Canada. Don't miss Trump next time.
Okay, so what you just heard is the musical duo Tenacious D. They're performing in Australia all this week. Well, they're not anymore. Here's what happened. Jack Black, who is one half of Tenacious D, presented Kyle Gass with a birthday cake. And he said, hey, make a birthday wish. And then you heard the response. The response was, don't miss Trump next time. The fallout from that comment has been pretty swift. Jack Black took to Instagram and he said, you know what? He was blindsided by the comment. He canceled the rest of the tour for the band. Kyle Gass was dropped by his agent. You know, an Australian politician called for the band to be deported from the country. Marina, what did you make of the way that this all unfolded for Tenacious D?
I think looking at it now, I want to say I wonder about the timing a lot. I think had it happened even today, I don't know if Jack Black would have had the same response. I think maybe he was acting really cautiously in that moment because it was so soon after.
Yeah.
But you know, thinking about it now, I wonder if it was an overreaction. I think it could have been more of like, an apology, but not everything else, canceling the tour, distancing himself from his really good friend. I wonder about the timing of it. And I think what we're seeing is, Jason referenced how Jon Stewart, even just having a day more than the other late night hosts, even just having that time gives people more time to figure out like, what is the way to be funny here? And how do I respond in a way that like really hits and yeah, I wonder about the timing of it, and everyone's sort of figuring out how to react and what the line is as everything is happening.
I'm curious about this moment because it sort of displays the dangers of reacting in the moment, Drew. Like there's something about people who want to participate in commentary on an unfolding event. And the one I just kept begging friends to say, "Hey, don't tweet a thing that's going to get you to lose your job. This is maybe not the moment for that." I should say Tenacious D are like not strangers to taking shots at Trump. What do you make of Jack Black's response to Kyle Gass's incident?
It was a business decision. That's what I think. I think someone in his representation said, hey, you have to distance yourself from this. Otherwise, we're going to have a hard time getting you cast in the next WB movie or whatever, right? Same deal with Stephen Colbert, right? He's on CBS. That's the official network of cops. He's not going to make fun of Trump when his entire audience is retired people who are going to vote for Trump, right? His bosses are going to say, let's tread lightly here. And then he'll do the serious thing. And his writers will want to make jokes and they'll all get thrown in the trash because that's late night television now. It has no cultural relevancy with anyone under the age of 40. I'm being genuous at 42, right?
Yeah.
And so, all of this is reflected in pop culture now over the past decade. Where are the protest songs? Where are the great war movies, that were made after Vietnam? Where is pop culture effectively commentating on this moment? Nowhere, because the people who control the money that goes into pop culture don't want to ruffle any feathers because then they reduce their audience size and they make less money and the stock goes down. The stock is the product, not the product itself.
I keep returning to the idea of actually, you know what? Sometimes it can be too soon. There's a way of doing commentary on those events. Jon Stewart is a good example of this, where maybe you just need to take a beat. Kyle Gass is, I think, far from the only celebrity, Jason, who maybe reacted a little too flippantly, a little bit too quickly on this whole thing, just given, I think, the seriousness of it. How do you navigate the gap between the gravity of an event and then the way that the internet encourages sort of an off-the-cuff memification reaction to massive but also sometimes grim moments in history, Jason?
I think you've got to find the balance. I think you have to understand. You can look at the memes, you can appreciate the memes, you can like the memes now because no one's looking at your likes anymore on Twitter. They can't.
No one's looking at Twitter.
No one's looking at Twitter at all. Sorry, it's X. I apologize.
How dare you?
Yeah. And then I think treating it seriously in terms of getting actual information is important. I am loath to make anyone sober up about the Trump assassination, to be honest, when it feels like there are much larger, more serious issues going on in the country, in the world. I think that I would take much more poorly to someone making jokes about Gaza versus a Trump assassination. And if you do read the reporting on the Trump assassination, but then you also want to make a joke about it on Twitter, to me, that's okay. I think that we can take things seriously in terms of wanting to learn and curiosity while not forcing ourselves to feel like we're in this constant fog of political history where we can't move, we can't do anything. If there's some kind of levity that you can get from Trump not dying, then sure. If that's what gets you through the day.
There's also, if I may, there's a discordance going on, right? Because Trump is an inherently ludicrous person. He is not a serious person.
Yeah.
And he is a bad person. And it feels, and I don't mean this, it feels tonally off to treat anything that happens to him with sobriety and reverence because he has basically no respect for anything except his own TV presence, right? So when people are like, oh, well, this might be, we finally saw the human side of Donald Trump. It's like,
I do think I want to take that into consideration because I agree with you. He is, to say contentious figure is to put it as an understatement. But I do think there's a sort of the idea of an assassination attempt demands a certain kind of seriousness. I'm running out of time. We've arrived at the bottom of the clock. So I got to leave it there, unfortunately. But Marina and Drew and Jason, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys spending this time with me. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys.
having
Of
us.
course. Drew Magary is a columnist for Defector. Marina Fang is a senior cultural reporter at HuffPost. Jason P. Frank writes for Vulture. My name is Elamine. This is Commotion. See you tomorrow.